Summary 2020. First and foremost, we like to express our sincere thanks to our readers for following us on our blog and giving us the support and encouragement to move forward. During 2020, we have reached readers from 121 countries with our articles in English and Spanish. Welcome to the new roads. We are reaching the end of 2020, which is undoubtedly going to be an important year in world history. The various events that happened and are happening have left no person in the world untouched. We have all experienced it in one way or another, and there is no doubt that astrology has helped many to understand what is happening. Let's review each important global topic in 2020. Pandemic. Never before in the history that we know, all the governments of the world, regardless of the political color they profess, have agreed on something: lock up the population. There is no known similar precedent, especially when the proportion of people infected and with symptoms was the same between countries that put the population under a strong lockdown or those that gave some flexibility of movement. It is worth remembering that most of the constitutions in different countries guarantee the free movement of people. Social revolts. Whether due to confinement, the difficult economic situation, or the confrontation of the people for having different political or other ideology, there were riots with strong clashes with the security forces in different parts of the world. Something had been seen in 2019 mainly in Chile, France, and Hong Kong, but during 2020, it was more widespread. Advancement of control in social networks. Social platforms began to censor articles, videos and alternative news in an unprecedented way, to the point that those responsible for the companies had to testify before the United States Senate for the practices they use. What was known as free expression seems to have ceased to be so. Now you cannot say something just by believing it or thinking about it, but what is said has to be within an unwritten rule, when this rule clearly goes against the constitutions of the countries that guarantee free speech. Online commerce. With the issue of confinement, online shopping has grown exponentially, to the point that people are changing their shopping habits. This change, which gives the convenience of buying and receiving merchandise at home without having to move, has already been adopted by the majority of the population, including those who previously did not. As a consequence, many local small businesses are going under. Online education. Schools were closed and online education began as a measure to prevent the spread of the virus. Although there was reliable information since the middle of the year that children and adolescents were not prone to contracting the virus or spreading it, only now, at the end of 2020, the governments of the different countries began to talk about opening schools again. Let us bear in mind that this measure was taken compulsively without much consideration for those that are challenged by this method. All around the world there are people who do not have the technical capacity to carry out online education. Almost everyone has smartphones, but they are very limited in their usage to be used for educational purposes. In addition, the overload put on parents by having to help children mainly with schedules and creating a structure for self-study. For some children it is hard to keep focus out of a classroom. Vaccines. This is a complicated topic, but it needs to be mentioned. It not only affects 2020, but also is going to be a big topic in 2021. When first talks about the vaccine started, I asked a doctor friend of mine the following. As they say, the virus has a component of HIV and that is why it's so contagious. If there is no vaccine for HIV and this virus started in the 80s, how can they create a vaccine now? His answer was, "That's a very good question," and that was it. I leave it there so you can draw your own conclusions. Any vaccine takes between 2 to 3 years to be developed, and requires monitoring to check for side effects. This follow-up is necessary, as there may be immediate, midterm or long-term unintended consequences. It is worth mentioning that vaccines introduces something foreign into the body, and that directly affects the DNA. Some reactions could take time to manifest. After listing the different things that occupied us in 2020, we turn to the astrological aspects that corresponds to the articles published on our blog related to the events that occurred. 1. Global Institutional Crisis, published on August 28, 2019. We talk about the crisis in government, financial and religious institutions that are going to manifest in 2020. In the financial crisis of 2008, none of the structural things that caused the crash were fixed. Governments mended banks and companies to move forward, and in 2020 we experience the results of that. When we talk about government, this includes areas such as education, health, and safety. It's clear now that no government is in a position to face a situation like the one we are in. The question we must ask ourselves is, what is the purpose of government if when in need to solve a general problem affecting the population, they are not present? If the solution to a pandemic, which is something that happens every so often, is to lock up healthy people, this clearly speaks to the level of improvisation in which we live. This is not a problem of resources or money, but a structural problem. Global institutions, as well as governments, needs to be restructured from the lowest levels to the top of the pyramid. 2. Our ability to discern in our daily life, published on August 11, 2019. This article talks about how the general population consumes news produced within governments, institutions and the media, without analyzing or thinking about the content of the information presented. Over time, people react to events and no longer believe what they are told, but most of the time is too late, the damage is already done. This could have been prevented simply by questioning the information when it was presented, to see if it was true or it had an agenda behind. News about the virus and the consequences got people really scared, when if you look closely and analyze the data, there was a lot of misinformation provided by the media and some government offices. 3. Forecast for 2020, published on December 9, 2019. This article talks about the biggest problem that humanity has today, which is corruption. Corruption not only in local or global governments institutions, but also in private and religious organizations. At the global level, we saw how the WHO delay announcements regarding the pandemic, or give conflicting information between the usage of the face mask, and other news, which look like the time or the contents of the announcements were driven by financial speculations, not with the main objective that the organization has. 4. Coronavirus 2020, Spanish Flu 1918, published on January 27, 2020. In this article, we describe the astrological parallelism between the Spanish flu and the situation with the virus in January, when no one was talking about a pandemic yet. This article may serve the purpose to awaken those who have any doubts about how things work, and how practical an astrological analysis can be. 5. The second half of 2020, published on May 4, 2020. This article talks about the problems related to health, financial situation and social unrest that was approaching in the coming months, based on the analysis of the lunar and solar eclipses of June 2020, as well as the influence of the retrograde planets in world events. 6. Astrological Evaluation, Spanish Flu and COVID-19, published on August 20, 2020. This article talks about the energy cycle of the current virus compared to the Spanish flu. By the energies present during 2020, until October, the energies will somehow prevent the full expansion of the virus, which will be noticed from starting November. Given the astrological aspects, the cases will continue to rise until the end of the first quarter of 2021. 7. Great conjunction Jupiter and Saturn next to the solstice of December 2020, published on July 21, 2020. This article talks about the great conjunction that will take place on December 21st, in addition to the solar eclipse on December 14th. Although this will have greater effect at the beginning of the year 2021, it is mentioned because it is part of 2020. At the time of writing this article, we still have almost a month left to finish 2020. So there is a possibility that what is mentioned may start manifesting before the end of the year. While the pharmaceutical companies are rushing to approve the respective vaccines, from an astrological point of view, it does not show a good outcome. Both by the solar eclipse and by the Great Conjunction, this shows that there is more hopes and desires in the air than substance. It can be interpreted as if people would like to believe in vaccines, just to get the virus out of their heads and go back to normal life, but there is another reality and it can lead to a rude awakening. This is the only pending topic to be fulfilled according to astrological predictions for 2020. When we see that certain aspects forecast a negative path, one would like to be wrong, but from our experience, all we can do is wish for the best, and prepare for the worst. Thank you for your visit. You can follow us on our blog at www.thenewroads.com.